You are listening to the Project Management Podcast. We bring project management topics to beginners and experts. Find us on the web at pmpodcast.blogspot.com or send your emails to pmpodcast@gmail.com. Hello and welcome to show number 27. I am Cornelius Fichtner. This is the Project Management Podcast for the 7th of April 2006. Today, there are several dishes on the menu for you. First, I would like to tell you about some great changes that I'm planning to make to the show. Next, we have a template to download and a book to give away. Then, I'd like to show you that you can monitor your projects without the sophisticated earned value approach. And lastly, I'd like to tell you why you should listen to the Cold Fusion podcast. Here we go. Today's episode of the Project Management Podcast is sponsored by Entiplicity Project Management Solutions. Project management is not just about the software. Whether you are a small operation or a large corporation, value-added project management must be based on flexible technology, solid processes, and strategic thinking. Learn more about Entiplicity's flexible, web-based technology, project management education, and strategic consulting. Visit www.weneedpm.com. So first off, I want to take a few moments and talk to you about upcoming changes to the format of the Project Management Podcast. Well, first of all, it's been a good general format what I've done so far in the first 27 shows. The ever-increasing number of listeners proves that to me. I have a great subscription base, and I also have sponsors, which is great for me. But I looked at my own listening habits, and I was looking at, what kind of show format and show length do I personally like to listen to? And I also listened to the advice of the podcast greats out there who give advice to other podcasters. But first and foremost, what I have done is I have gone through the survey which many of you have filled in, and I'm basing most of my changes that I'm going to make on that survey. Well, first of all, the survey says we want to hear more about real projects. We want to hear what happened on these projects. What problems did they have, and how did project managers respond to these projects? We want more lessons learned. We want more takeaways, more case studies. And another trend in the resources was we want more tips. So that's what we're going to change. This is what you're going to hear in the future. Also, what I can tell you is that I'm going to try and make shorter shows. Well, in a sense. The shows which are going to have an interview are still going to be along the lines of about 45 minutes to an hour. Because I think that when I'm talking to a really good project manager about an interesting project management topic, I just don't want to limit myself to saying, okay, we have to cut it short because it can only be 20 minutes in duration. So the shows with an interview are going to be longer, but the main focus of that particular show is going to be the interview. The shows that do not have an interview, those I'm going to try and keep to about 20 to 30 minutes each week. What I will also do is I will integrate the helpful resources, the news, and the events in one segment, in one short segment. As far as the events go, I'm hoping that I can provide events to everyone over time. I have listeners from all over the world, so I want to make sure that I cover everyone and that I make sure that you know where events are happening in your area. As far as the helpful resources and the news go, my promise to you is that it will not just be any kind of project management related news and resources. The items that I will be covering in the future will always be immediately applicable. I will always try and back everything up with something that you can immediately do with that information in order to improve your projects and to accomplish your goals as a project manager. And this is really going to be a major theme that I'm going to look and focus on in the future. I want immediate applicability. I want you to be able to go and say, wow, I got to write this down. I got to try this out tomorrow. Yeah, well, and then of course there's the humorous bit. And even though I said that the news items will always be immediately applicable in your job, well, there's always this, one-off odd news item that just makes you go, and chuckle a little bit. I'll keep those coming, so don't worry about that. Next, of course, there's the website, the blog at pmpodcast.blogspot.com. What you'll see at this point is a few minor enhancements that I'm going to make to this site. For instance, about 10% of you are downloading the show directly. So you're not using any kind of podcatcher. You're probably listening to this show on your computer speakers or via headphones directly through your computer. It's very difficult for you to find all the 27 shows. So I've created a one page that contains links to all the show files and one easy way for you to find them all. At a later stage, I'm going to introduce major changes. I'm going to have my own domain, my own website, and it won't just be a blog anymore. Well, and then of course there's the question of covering my expenses. Well, you all know I have a sponsor and I will continue to have sponsors in the future as well. But there will only be one sponsor per show, no more. I have also joined the Amazon affiliate program, which means that if in the future there are going to be books on the show presented, I will link to those books from the website. That means that if you're buying this book by clicking on the link, I get a little bit of a kickback and I will be able to cover my expenses and continue doing the show. So that's going to be your thank you to me by saying, I'm buying the books via your link, therefore I appreciate your show, so thanks a lot. I'm also going to be joining the 10-step affiliate program, same thing there. If you are planning to buy things through 10-step, buy them through me and I will get a little bit of a percentage of what you're paying to continue with the show. Yeah, and finally, and this is really exciting for me here, the show music and the jingles. I have a friend, his name is Greg Manning. He is a musician out of Los Angeles, known him for years, and he has agreed to write new music, new loops, new intro, new outro for the show. So sometime down the road, you're going to hear different music on the show. Yeah, and that's about it. Those are the changes that are coming up in the future. You'll see those changes not happening all at once. They'll be coming in gradually, but I wanted to let you know that things will be changing, and they'll be changing for much the better, I promise. Well then, let me move on to the listener feedback. As I was reviewing the survey, I found the following entry. I have not finished catching up all the episodes yet, but I have just finished the status report chapter. I have a very simple template I would like to share with the audience. I have used this template for many years as a project manager and project member. I learned this when I was in a Big Four consulting group and applied it to many projects and many customer locations that I managed. This feedback was from Anthony Chang, and Anthony is in Japan. And he has graciously given this template to us. And when you go to the blog, you will see that it's there for you to download right away. Now, this template is, like he said, it's a simple template, but it's, from my point of view, extremely effective. This template is supposed to be handed to all the team members on your project, and they can return their status in this template to you. It consists of 4 sections. Section 1 is accomplishments this week. Section 2 is a plan for the next week. 3 is issues and risks. And 4 is, well, of course, other. And that's not just everything that you'll get out of this template, because Anthony has actually gone ahead and he's put in good examples and bad examples in this template as well, so that when you hand it to your project team members, they can see, okay, this is a good way to fill this template in, this is a bad way to fill this template in, this is absolutely perfect. So you can use this template to hand to your project team members. But, and this is the beauty of it, I think, you can also use this yourself when you do your project status report to your sponsor, to your stakeholders. You can more or less just copy-paste the information that your project team members give you and put it into your own status report. Well, a copy-paste kind of status report. And you're done very quickly. So, there you go. Go to the blog, pmpodcast.blogspot.com, and download the template from Anthony right there. I am very excited now to tell you that we have 2 copies of a book to give away today. And this book is by none other than Jerry Manis. If you remember, a few shows ago, I did a review on Jerry Manis' monthly podcast. And I said that in this podcast, even though Jerry has a book to sell, he gives great advice in his podcast. Well, this is the book. The book is called Napoleon on Project Management, and like I said, we have 2 copies. Now, by a strange coincidence, Andrew Smith from Auckland, New Zealand, he sent a review on this book to me this week as I was talking to Jerry about doing this book giveaway. And this review on Jerry's book is written by Bud Bilanich. Bud calls himself the common sense guy, and you can find this review by Bud at www.commonsenseguy.com. Here's the sentence that I like best. In short, Napoleon on Project Management dispenses common sense advice, not only to project management, but leadership. The book lives up to its subtitle, Timeless Lessons in Planning, Execution, and Leadership. Now, if that doesn't want to make you win one of these copies, probably nothing will. Now, here you go. How are you going to win one of these copies? Quite simple. All you have to do is send an email to me, pmpodcast@gmail.com. In the subject line, simply write Napoleon. And in the email body itself, write your name and where in the world you live. As always, I will print out every single email. All those emails go into a big box, and my wife will pull out the 2 lucky winners. And the 2 lucky winners, they will then have to send their physical mailing address to Jerry, and Jerry will send them the book. Now, today isn't the last time that we're going to do this. I'm going to announce this again in next week's show, so you have about 7 or 8 days to send me your email. But as always, the sooner you send it, the sooner you're done. Okay, helpful resources this week. There's actually just one, and it's not even from this week. Yes, what I've done is I've actually gone back to the earned value segment 2 weeks ago. So don't look in today's show for update on helpful resources. Go back for 2 weeks, because I found a nice earned value management primer from Computer World. It's a really nice overview of what earned value is, and I especially like this statement right here. Despite earned value management's reputation for offering insight into project progress, many IT executives aren't yet embracing the discipline, partly because the underpinnings that make it work aren't in place. Yeah. And that's all there is for helpful resources this week. And you know where to go. You'll find the link on the blog in the Earned Value Management segment that we did 2 weeks ago. That's about it. And this primer on earned value management from Computer World is of course the perfect segue to take us right into the main topic of today, and that is no earned value? No problem. When I did the earned value introduction 2 weeks ago, I was wondering, well, what about all the project managers out there who don't have earned value? How are they going to figure out whether or not their project is on track or not? And this week, I was stopping by at the PM Forum discussion boards, and I found a question in that forum by Abdul. And Abdul is from www.howtorescueprojects.com. And he wrote, "Hi all, almost all projects experience some form of trouble. What are the telltale signs that you tend to look out for in order to see if a project is steering into trouble?" Well, this is exactly the question that I had asked myself. What do you do if you don't have earned value? Well, here are my answers for you. Let me start out by saying that in order to define trouble, you first need some sort of an idea what on course means. Yeah? On top of the line is, of course, earned value management, like we all know. But like you heard in my introduction to earned value requires a certain effort, and not everyone is able to put all that effort in or has the freedom to use earned value on their projects. For instance, let's say you are a small project management consulting firm and you are dealing with small and medium companies. Well, there is no way that these small and medium companies are going to pay for the earned value overhead as they see it. Or let's take another scenario. You are a full-time employee in a company that is organizationally just not ready for earned value management. Well, how are you going to have some sort of an idea what in trouble and what on course means? Well, in the end, earned value is nothing but comparing a plan to actuals. And if you cannot be as elaborate as earned value requires, you will just simply have to use, let's call them metrics, that are less elaborate. Let's start at the start. You can almost tell at the beginning of a project if this project is going to be in trouble or not. If you are working as a contractor, for instance, and your customer doesn't have a central contact person for your project, you probably already know that something is amiss. Next thing, you don't even have to be a contractor. If the deadlines on your project are extremely tight, or as it's called, aggressive, then you also know that sometime in this project you're going to run into some sort of a trouble. Now that's just a couple of ideas on how to spot a troubled project at the onset. And as you're moving along through the project, you're going to just use key performance indicators, KPIs, as they are available to you. Your number one key performance indicator is your schedule, because you're going to have to sit down, you're going to have to create some form of a schedule, high-level milestone schedule, a detailed schedule down to the 5-minute task. Whatever you have is good enough to compare a plan versus actuals. Start with the milestones. Compare milestones to what actually happened. Define milestones for key events such as, project kickoff, a prototype is ready, a vendor contract has to be signed, materials have to be delivered, etc. Compare the planned milestone date to the actual milestone date. Or you can just go ahead and compare your original schedule to where you stand in the project today. Well, today is April the 8th. According to plan, we should be about 50% done with the feasibility study. Well, are you? It's quite a simple comparison. Next, you should always try and take a forward-looking approach and look at features that are not yet complete versus time left towards the end of the project, and see if you even have enough time left to build the features that you still have to build. You should also analyze the budget and compare it to what you actually spent. And of course, you do the same with your work hours. Well, this is almost earned value management. You compare money to money spent and hours planned to hours spent. But since you may not have all the absolute detailed numbers, we're more looking at ballpark figures here. What you also want to do is look at the number of change requests you receive and pay close attention to those, because most of these change requests, they refer back to your original scope. And if you keep getting more and more and more change requests to the original scope, this means simply you didn't know what your original scope was. You didn't work well enough with your customer to define the scope. And now the customer comes back to you and says, I want this changed, I want that changed, I want the other changed. So you didn't take enough time in the analysis and planning phase of your project. And you may just have to stop, go back and redo that phase. Every project should have goals. So why not take your original goals and see where you stand with those? If your goal is achieve a 30% higher turnover in the manufacturing throughput by May 2006, well then try to be as objective as you possibly can and assess your current project status. Are we going to achieve this goal? Yes or no? It's as simple as that. Now, here's a good one for you. What is 90% of what a project manager does? Communication. So, you have to look at how project communication is currently working. Do you have a breakdown in communication? That is a strong indicator that your project is off track. Can you not get anyone on the phone? Do they just not answer you? Do you not get any support from the users that are supposed to be on the project? Is your sponsor not available? Are your stakeholders not answering your emails or your phone messages? Well, that's a pretty big sign right there. I also talked to a couple of project managers that I work with, and Christine Munson, I also had an interview with her a little while ago. She said, well, a good sign is if your stakeholders are yelling at you, so the opposite of not speaking to you. Because think of this. The stakeholders are usually doing a project because there is some sort of a business need. There is some sort of a pain that they're trying to solve by implementing your project. And if the pain gets bigger and bigger and bigger, well, they will start yelling at you. And that is, again, a very big sign in communication terms that your project is kind of not working. If you go back to many of these items that I have just listed here, you will notice that what you really want to do is compare a before figure with a current figure. Again, this is similar to earned value, but you are not just looking at the budgeted hours, the budgeted cost versus the spent. It's not going to be an exact pulse of your project as earned value is going to be. But I have two more for you, and those two are not really anything that you can plan and then compare to afterwards. The first one is you should never, as a project manager, forget to trust your gut feeling. I know this sounds a bit strange, but as a project manager, I have kind of become attuned to my projects, sensitive to the status of my projects. I can tell when something is amiss. It's the way people talk to you on your projects, not even the people who are involved in your projects, people who are not involved in your projects, who hear things. There is a kind of undertone when they speak to you. It's also the way that your team members communicate their problems with you. There is some sort of a way that they turn their head and the way they look at you for help. It's just this, it's almost inexplicable. You have to really feel it. You have to sense this. It's the way the customers keep calling you again and again about the same topics and keep asking the same questions again and again. In situations like that, I trust my instinct and act and try to figure out what's wrong here and what do I have to solve. Well, and the second item is, and here I'm coming back to Christine, who gave us already one other item that you can look at. And in her experience, in something on your project is wrong when you take the long way to go to the restroom. In her case, she had a project that wasn't going well, and the shortest distance to go from her desk to the restroom was right in front of her boss's office. And whenever she passed, he'd call her in, and it was, another bashing. So she started going the long way around. So, are you afraid of going to the restroom directly in front of your boss's office? If that's the case, your project is definitely in trouble. All right, so much for all the ways that you can not use earned value management, but still be able to figure out whether or not your project is in trouble. But being able to recognize a troubled project by using all these key performance indicators, or gut feelings if you wish, they can assist you in minimizing the negative impact of your project. But once you've identified that you have a troubled project, you're going to face a much bigger problem. What you have done so far is probably, just a ballpark review of where am I with my project and what's happening here, and you figure out, whoops, yeah, it's in trouble. It's in trouble. Now you need a true assessment of your project status. You need that relative to time. You need that relative to cost and, of course, to quality. Plus, you're going to have to identify the cause of your troubles. Where is all this pain coming from? And why do you need that? Well, you need that in order to start developing a plan for recovery. And for this, you're really going to have to pull up your sleeves, and you're going to have to look at every possible aspect of the project and try to define where you stand in every possible aspect, really. And that, of course, is very difficult, and if you don't have some sort of a plan against which you can compare yourself, it's almost impossible. Yeah, well, and this recovery of a troubled project is something that we will be looking at in future episodes of the Project Management Podcast. I will be giving you my personal experience with troubled projects and how I approached them. I have also got an interview planned with a project manager who has pulled around a major project in a multinational company. So I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be very, very interesting to hear. And finally, I would also like and get in touch with the Troubled Projects SIG and speak to one of their board members. They don't know about that yet, but we'll get in touch with them. Don't worry about that. Yeah, and that's about it. How to figure out whether your project is in trouble without using earned value management. And even though I said at the beginning of the show today that I was going to try and keep my shows from now on between about 20 to 30 minutes, I'm going to go overtime today because, well, the time that I spent on telling you what we're going to change doesn't really count now, does it? So, here to end the show today is a review of the Cold Fusion podcast, episode 18, I think, that I recorded earlier. I found the Cold Fusion podcast simply by surfing around the web. I went to Google and I entered project management and podcast, and up came, amongst others, the Cold Fusion podcast, and in particular, episode 18, where they're talking about project management. You can find them at coldfusionpodcast.com. As always, there's a link on my blog. They say about themselves, the Cold Fusion Podcast, your source for Cold Fusion news, features, tips, and tricks. This particular podcast is hosted by Brian Kaiser and Michael Haney. They have worked together several years, about 2 years, and they are website developers. They do contracting work, and it is usually custom contracting work on websites. Now, for those of you who don't know, and frankly, I didn't know, Cold Fusion, as listed in Wikipedia, is a tag-based programming language which creates HTML that can implement dynamic web pages, for instance, to display customer-specific HTML depending on which customer visits a website. Cold Fusion was purchased by Macromedia and then merged into Adobe Systems. So much about this particular podcast in general. Of course, their main focus is to talk about Cold Fusion, how to use it, tips, tricks, product reviews, you name it. But in episode 18, Brian and Michael talk about project management. So if you want to subscribe to this podcast, you really only need to listen to episode 18, and you can fast forward right away to about the 7-minute mark. That's where the actual discussion on project management begins. They start out with a great disclaimer saying that what you will hear is their experience and only their experience and nothing but their experience in their projects, and your mileage may vary. So let's listen in for a moment what they have to say.
All right. Well, let's talk about project management.
Let's do that.
Why do we care? We're all developers out there. We don't care about project management at all, right?
Well, until we actually have to deliver something.
Until you have to deliver something. So to me, we've done a lot of projects over the years,
right.
Tons and tons and tons, and I still think that we're developing the best way to do things. So some of the things that we've started doing lately that seem to make a lot of sense for us.
Yep.
Clients see web pages visually, obviously. They want to click, they want to see it. It's been really beneficial for us lately to do everything backwards almost. We are kind of the hardcore, all right, we're going to develop the data model first and then write the code to support that and then write the views to support that. So the last thing that we have actually created was the user interface to it. And that hasn't worked out so well on several different projects.
Right.
So back to that disclaimer when they said it's their experience. That's actually something I really enjoyed. I found it a benefit that my experience on projects varied to their experience. The difference is really what makes this particular episode, for me, interesting and fun to listen to. What's also immediately clear is the fact that Brian and Michael, they are developers and they are not professional project managers. They understand project management. They read and have read about project management. They learned about project management on the job and they act as project managers. But first and foremost, they are developers. And that comes across clearly when they begin digressing from the project management topics and they begin talking about the technical aspects of delivering and developing a website. Here, they really shine and you can tell they feel much more comfortable at talking about these topics. You can also tell from a statement which kind of made me do a double take at the end of the podcast where one of them says that most of the project management books he has read are useless because
I don't think they apply to research and development, basically. There are a lot of things that have never been built before. I mean, that's the whole point of doing something new, something different. Business is all about innovation. And if you're building something from the ground up that's never been done before, there's going to be some gotchas.
Yeah.
If it'd been done before, then you could just go out and buy it.
I found that rather amusing, since what he was just talking about, this is the clear-cut definition of a project. It's something new. It's never been done before. That's what we have project management for. As a professional project manager, I noticed that many of the problems on their projects were probably resulting from the fact that they do not have a full-time project manager assigned to their projects. I think they understand that, and I can also foresee a time when their company grows that there is certainly going to be a job opening for one of us at their company. As they discuss web development project management, we learn about one of their projects, the things that went well, the things that could have gone better. It is impressive to see that they realize their mistakes and that they know that they can learn from them. I think in creating this podcast, Brian and Michael actually went through a very healthy and very helpful lessons learned process. And that lessons learned process, this particular episode of the podcast, will take them to the next level in project management. It would be absolutely wonderful if all project managers out there did a podcast at the end of all of their projects as a lessons learned, because they would learn from their mistakes and the good things on the project, and we would learn along with them. All right, my verdict. Brian and Michael are really not shy about giving you the truth. They really lay it out there for you. They talk about their failures and they talk about their successes. And this is what makes this episode great. You can learn from somebody else's successes and mistakes without having to make them yourself. While it is of course mostly applicable to those of you project managers out there who are in software development or web development in particular, the basic message that you will get from listening to Brian and Michael talk is usable in every single project in any given industry, and that is communicate with your customer and define your requirements. That's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. Next week, we will be returning to my passion, project management offices, PMOs. I have a great interview with Frank Path waiting for you. As always, you can find us on the web at pmpodcast.blogspot.com or send your emails to pmpodcast@gmail.com. And when you write, please tell me where in the world you are writing from. And finally, we have this. A project is one small step for the project sponsor and one giant leap for the project manager. With that, speak up! There are tons of project management discussion boards and discussion forums available. Sign up and voice your opinion in them. Trust me, you will learn more from what you write yourself than from what others write. Until next time.